What is it about dinosaurs? They're big. They're scary. They're not around today. They're just cool. They're just, they're dragons.
Well, it's very hard not to love Iggy because he's the kind of flagship beast. He does all the PR, he gets his toenails painted and all of that.
I heard about the dinosaurs when I was probably aged about 7.
I came here with my parents and I brought my children here and I brought my grandchildren here to see the dinosaurs. So they've been through three generations or 4 generations of our family of dinosaurs.
When I was younger, I used to always come to the park with my parents and look at the dinosaurs.
I was a big fan of dinosaurs when I was a kid, and this is quite a famous site. The dinosaurs, they're quite well known, and I think I saw them in some children's book when I was probably about 7 or 8.
In fact, my dad's a bit of a local historian, and back in the 80s he wrote a book about Crystal Palace Park, and so the dinosaurs are very much part of my childhood growing up.
This is the Hylosaurus. He is probably my favourite. I don't think he gets quite as much love as the other standing dinosaurs, but he's still pretty cool.
People are seeing a dinosaur the size it was. Not a skeleton in the museum or a model, it's a full-size dinosaur. Yeah. And that's the thing that draws them to it, isn't it?
This is our megalosaur, or Meg, because we're really great at naming things here.
One of the things I've really loved about doing this project is being able to come over here and touch the dinosaurs. I mean, the first month I came and did this, I think everyone in the group spent the first 15 minutes taking selfies with the dinosaurs.
Hello. Quite a hefty bit of concrete to have fallen off.
The sculptures are kind of crumbling and they really need a lot of work.
This is going to start to completely fall apart and not be here for much longer.
It's only this last few years where someone's taken the incentive to look after them.
You're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about it, you're going to work and you're thinking about it.
And we get these huge cracks in the dinosaurs.
This is everybody's dinosaurs, it's our dinosaurs.
This poor guy hasn't got much of a face left.
We need to take responsibility to make sure that the sculptures and the landscape stay in top shape.
Well, so they've been sort of 3-4 generations of my family. It'd be nice to run on for another 3-4 generations after, wouldn't it? So they're here for posterity. Was it the 1850s, I think, or something like that on there. So yeah. It'd be nice if they get to 2050, wouldn't it?
The Crystal Palace Dinosaurs are famous the world over. Anyone who's studied paleontology usually has an introduction to the first public unveiling of reconstructions of dinosaurs, and that was at Crystal Palace. In the early part of the 1800s, lots of fossils were being discovered, and sort of this vision was emerging of extinct animals, lost worlds. And that was all kind of an incredible mystery. Bringing that story out to the public, it was all through sort of academic processes, and there were fossils you could see in a museum, but it didn't really have any life in it. In 1851, when the world's first exhibition came, there was an effort to try to make a lot of these sort of ideas more accessible to the public. And when the Crystal Palace was moved from Hyde Park to South London, it was rebuilt, and the idea was to fill the grounds with things that would interest people and also enlighten them to some extent. So the dinosaurs were an obvious candidate for that. So the whole landscape around, it was a number of acres that was developed to tell the story of extinct animals. That whole story was beginning to unfold, and the idea was to sort of give people a chance to experience it in whatever way they wanted to experience it. They could come and just walk and enjoy the landscape, or they could actually get quite immersed in the whole emerging field of paleontology and geology and the changing Earth. As scientists, we are always working with somewhat incomplete data, and we put together the best understanding we can. Bringing that to something that we can understand and see is the job of an artist.
So the story behind these was that they were the idea of Sir Richard Owen, who was one of the leading natural scientists of the time, professor, expert in paleontology. He had studied many of the early dinosaurs. Owen had the idea of building a kind of geological park or visitor place with representations of all the main rock formations of the British Isles, which he connected to industry, because of course this was the time of coal and iron and all of the heavy industry based on geology. But his passion was the fossils, and he wanted to show the dinosaurs and the marine reptiles and all the other creatures. And he thought, what better than making them full size, which was a scary concept. They had to be built of concrete, and the artist who built them was Benjamin Waterhouse Hawkins. And I don't think he had ever had a commission like this before in his life. This was the first time anybody had tried to visualize what dinosaurs looked like. The rather dour professor, together with this showman artist, had to come up with images that were satisfactory in terms of scientific accuracy, but that would be exciting and impressive for the visitor.
He did his best with what the scientists told him that they thought the dinosaurs and other extinct animals should look like, and he constructed them into really convincing living forms. And they look like perfectly functioning and quite beautiful animals, quite active, and you can see the muscles, you can see the way the scales change size and orientation along the body. I mean, they're really very, very well done. They look great, but they look quite different from what we think today. Part of that gives a real story of how science works, because science is always improving its interpretations as we get more data, as we get different ways of looking at things and understanding how they work together. So our understanding of dinosaurs, our drawings of dinosaurs, our sculptures of dinosaurs are going to be more accurate, more approximating the truth of what they actually look like. But there still will be more changes in the future as we understand a lot more.
They may look sort of quaint to us because they're a mid-Victorian image of what people thought at the time, but they were carefully based on the available evidence. It's worth remembering they were set up 5 or 6 years before Darwin's Origin of Species, the book from 1859, that many people regard as the seminal or key work in all of the biological sciences. We have many more fossils, so our job is much easier than it was for Owen and Hawkins back in the 1850s. If you have many fossils, many of which are complete, the whole skeleton shows you that in fact some of these animals that he showed as quadrupeds were bipeds, they were up on their hind legs. But the other big thing that's changed, of course, apart from all the new fossils, is our ways of analyzing the fossils. So some of the equipment, some of the techniques that we can use that they did not have. What we now have are computer visualization techniques, so that you can ask a question like, how fast could Tyrannosaurus Rex run? And so we can take the skeleton and scan it and read it into a computer as a three-dimensional model. And then there are relatively widely available softwares that our students can now use to essentially animate the skeleton, make it move. And in doing that, you're not necessarily trying to make a movie in the sense of Jurassic Park. You're trying to make a movie in the sense of Edward Muybridge, who was a great Victorian who famously made film of galloping horses and humans running and walking, to try to capture the complexity of locomotion.
With things like feathers on dinosaurs, we now know that feathers were fairly common among some of the dinosaurs. That was all brand new information within the last few decades, and it sort of worked its way into our understanding, but it's still changing quite a lot. One of the big topics of discussion is color and surface texture on the animals themselves. The amount of muscle and fat, those are things that we have to interpret. We don't really know at this point. In the past, we thought we wouldn't actually ever be able to find that information out, and now new fossils are occasionally coming to light, but also new ways of understanding information and weaving it together.
The correct position now would not be to laugh at Owen and Hawkins, because they were doing their best. And of course, if we were to laugh at them and say, oh, they were very silly, they got it wrong, well, what will people say in 100 years' time about our current images of dinosaurs?
The Crystal Palace Dinosaurs are really important because they were the first moment that that interpretation was brought to life, and you could actually see something that looked very convincingly like an extinct animal, just a little bit different from how we think of them today.
Standing here and listening to planes go above and listening to people walk around and do their jogging and things, it's strange to think of how different it would have been sort of 170 years ago when people were coming here for a day out and perhaps promenading about, looking at each other's outfits and seeing the people to see that were important in society. We are standing on the terraces at the top of Crystal Palace Park. Behind us in 1854 we would have seen the Crystal Palace itself that had been moved from the Great Exhibition in Hyde Park and brought here to create what was going to become a big commercial endeavour and a huge site of knowledge and of learning and of excitement as well, so kind of a theme park. It was a huge building, so it went from over there and it went all the way across the park to the other side. They landscaped the whole park. Part of that was the dinosaurs down at the end of the park, so it would have been a full day of entertainment for the Victorians. This was a huge building, and to begin with, a great success. Millions of people came here. They built 2 railway stations to service the number of people that were coming to visit, and then gradually it fell into decline. At the beginning of the 20th century, it wasn't used so much, people didn't come, it was hugely expensive to maintain, and they fell into debt. Eventually, in 1936, something happened one night in November, and the whole thing burnt down. So what's left today? Not a lot really. We can see some of the structures of the landscapes that were around. There are some statues still here, and of course down at the southeast end of the park there are the Crystal Palace Dinosaurs, which survived. They weren't anywhere near the fire, and we can still walk around them and see them today and see that really important piece of landscaping that the Victorians left for us there. After the fire in 1936, the park was basically closed down. It was too dangerous for people to come in here, and then we had the Second World War, and it wasn't until the 1950s when people started to come back into the park and tidy it up, and the dinosaurs got renovated then. The last major round of conservation on the whole site happened in around 2001, 2002. And since then there has been work done on some of the individual sculptures, but never on the whole site.
There they were, they're wonderful, this wonderful historic landmark. And I was introduced to them through my friend and colleague, Joe Kane, who is a historian of science. And from a distance, they all look fine as sculptures. But when you get up close, you notice that the sculptures are crumbling. And speaking to Joe about it, we thought somebody should do something about fixing them up. Turned out that that doesn't happen just by itself. You need to actually get people motivated to do things and to form an organization and to basically encourage the council, who are the owners of the sculptures, to do the right thing and make sure that they're properly conserved. Joe and I founded an organization called Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs. We had the idea for it in 2013, formed as a board by 2014. Then the rest has been getting conservation work done, getting enthusiasm raised, making sure that people know why the dinosaurs are important. That's improving the interpretation about it, improving access, giving tours for people. I think with lots of things in life, there's this first moment where you realize that there is some kind of a problem, and you look around for whoever it is that's responsible and you want to ask them to do something. And when you realize that that just doesn't happen automatically, you realize that somebody that makes things happen has to be you, it has to be us, it has to be a bunch of us all working together. So that's what we're about, is trying to give a little bit of a structure and context for people to work together.
If people are happy to wear high-vis, we've been asked to wear high-vis.
I take it we need the watering can up there.
We certainly do. Thank you for volunteering.
So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spades.
Yes, let's go.
So what we're doing with Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs is making sure that this amazing site stays well conserved and that its message gets broadcast to the public today as well. We need you guys, the fans of the dinosaurs, to come and help us do that. So we're really glad that you could come today. This is our moment of putting in today's equivalent of fossil plants. Actually, I should let Louise Yates say a few comments. She's our garden designer.
Hello,
And,
yes, thank you, Eleanor.
Yep.
Yeah, this is a terrific opportunity, but really quite a challenge.
To have something this important and this big, 90% of it being done by volunteer labour is terrific. And the enthusiasm, you know, is, you don't get that with people necessarily who do it for a job. So that's really nice.
If you do that with all of them.
When I first came here in June to start helping out, all of this was really covered in weeds, you know, it was a bit of a state, and some of the dinosaurs, you couldn't actually see that much of them. The ichthyosaurs down there were pretty much, you know, covered in vegetation. So the project is designed to try and take away all the stuff that, these plants that shouldn't be here, all of the weeds, and to plant it back in a way as close as we can to how the plants would have been at the time of the dinosaurs.
This is the world's first Jurassic Park, in quotes, but it's also a lot more than that. It goes into basically the parts of geologic time where animals first came onto land and they interacted with plants when they did that, and that part of the story has been missing, and we're going to bring that back. We've got a team of volunteers. We've been working on it for about 6 months.
I'm not an expert on paleological planting. I did maybe a term of that at university a million years ago in geological time. I've got to try and marry that prehistoric fantasy with the practical reality of how things will actually do well and survive, as well as be authentic. So yeah, it's a huge challenge, that. We're talking about time before there were pollinators, so they weren't flowers at all. And we're talking about ferns, horsetails, which are these weird things which have barely changed. This is why people call them living fossils. Monkey puzzle tree, Araucaria, that has hardly changed since it was a fossil. Anyone who does get to handle this, it's very fierce. We just need to mind how we go. The ones we planted last time are doing great, but they're sort of blending into the new weeds that are coming up. Whoa, hey, just come here. This is a piece of theatre. This is a really visual space. People can't generally get onto it. All they can do is look at it like a stage. We've got to lay it all out and make it look exciting. And the challenge down here is that the plants that we've got to work with, they're all very similar because they're all that survives of fossil plants today. And so I wanted to be able to put in something that was visually really different so that it looks exciting from over there, which is the nearest most people can get to it. And the horsetails are really unusual, they're really different. These are cute. Yeah, they are, aren't they? I mean, these are very kind of 1960s bungalow plants, but after I've played with all the fun, imaginary, fantasy, creative stuff, you have to still think about, is there enough water for this plant on this island? How expensive is it? I mean, we've got our 6 tree ferns. They are only grown in the southern hemisphere. They have to come all the way over here with passports and goodness only knows what. They are very delicate plants. You don't want to cover this island with things that are then going to die on you. Ultimately, it's about making something that looks really amazing. You don't want to say all of this is authentic only to have a member of the public who quite reasonably doesn't know anything about botany saying that looks quite boring and green. That's why I've stuck my neck out and said let's put some horsetails in, because they're crazy. I've got a background in theatre. I wanted to put some theatre in to this design as well, because it's a stage. The challenge as a designer is that you never really stop thinking about something that is exciting and difficult and is going to present lots of potential problems. You know, you're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about it, you're going to work and you're thinking about it, you know. Good design actually is a response to real challenges. I'm enjoying these challenges.
We'll let that soak for a bit and see how they go.
Well done.
We are also going to do some campaigning for our bridge project. We are in this difficult situation of having a temporary bridge which costs a lot of money to put up. It's not a sustainable situation. There is no funding for us to do this beyond sort of the next couple months. So we need to find a new solution. What we found, the thing that people really like is to come onto the island in a tour context and to actually get up to to the sculptures and sort of feel that their size and their magic up close. At the moment, because there is no bridge access, it's very difficult for us to offer tours. So after a couple years of discussing this with the council about how to get a new bridge put in, we have initiated a fundraising campaign, crowdfunding from the community with support from the mayor. And once we've got that bridge, we can offer tours to people on a regular basis. The mayor has put in about £30,000. We've just had support from some celebrities who've said that they think it's a really smashingly good idea. Turns out that Slash, who is from South London, is a huge fan of the Crystal Palace Dinosaurs. So yeah, lots of support on all ends of the spectrum.
We've got the money, we've got all this great help from you guys, and the dinosaurs are slowly and lovingly being restored to their former glory. So yeah, we've got fingers crossed that we can keep all of this stuff alive. We've just got to get cracking.
This is a very important project for us. We are fabricating a bridge for Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs. The bridge is about 8 metres long and it's for access from the bank of the lake to the island on which the dinosaurs are on. It's fabricated from mild steel and it will be galvanised and then will be installed in the park. Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs have raised money from a variety of sources and we're giving our time at cost rates to build it and we're looking for sponsorship for all the various elements. Some of the techniques that we're using are really unusual. It's not something that's been done extensively before. The idea of bending up from the comb and into the parapet, the bridge parapet, is a really interesting, innovative way of working, which we're hoping will be more commonly used after this. So it's fascinating on many levels, and it's something that will get a lot of attention once it's in place. The bridge, most of the time, will be sitting in the middle of the lake, and you will be unable to access either end. When we want to get maintenance access, it will be pulled into position, rotated around a central point, and people will be able to walk over the bridge and onto the island.
I think it's pretty natural, especially when you get up close to those sculptures, to sort of feel their power and energy.
I think one of the things I really like about being on the island is you get a sort of sense of the diorama that was set up, in that you've got Megalosaurus sneaking up on its lunch, this poor little Hylosaurus who has no idea what's about to hit it, but there's a definite look of hunger in the eyes. The dinosaurs have been here for over 150 years. They're made out of concrete. They weren't probably intended to still be standing here at the time. And just things such as the weather, when it gets cold and there's any rain in there, that will freeze and that will expand when it becomes ice, so that makes cracks. We've had plants growing out of them and we get these huge cracks in the dinosaurs, and that is what we're trying to stop with the conservation work. These are our pterosaurs. As you can see, one of them's looking a bit healthier than the other. We think this was vandalism. I think it was some point in the 90s. So this poor guy hasn't got much of a face left. There were also 2 more sculptures which have been lost entirely.
People are really delighted to get onto the island because it is pretty fun, but they don't always behave properly if they're on their own, and they will inadvertently and sometimes tragically, intentionally, they'll cause damage.
Vandalism on the dinosaurs has been a problem in the past. We do have photos of them from, say, the 1990s with graffiti on them and things. What we see is things like the back of the Hylosaur. The spikes are starting to go missing because people are using them to climb up onto the sculpture.
Most people really want to conserve the site and are respectful, but stuff happens. So we want to make sure that the security is good on the island. For that, we want to control access. It's also really, really important that we get conservators onto the island on a regular basis to monitor the sculptures.
People get onto the island using the two weirs either side, and that's been a problem for a long time. The waterways are not maintained in the way that they perhaps should be.
In the last 15 years, often the island has been inaccessible and nobody has kept track of the damage, and it's been allowed to sort of snowball, to increase.
When I see people on the island and I see images of people climbing on the sculptures, it makes me feel a bit sad that they don't understand the significance of the site that they've accessed, that they're trespassing upon. I run the social media and I opened up the Instagram page, and a member of the public had sent a photograph of the megalosaur with half its face missing, saying, "Do you know about this?" And I went, no, I don't know about this. There were cracks existing on the sculpture already, so we knew that there was already a problem. We also know that people do hang from the jaw on it as well. One of the first things that we needed to do when the jaw broke was to retrieve the pieces and make sure that they were stored safely, so the charity went on and did that. And what we then needed to think about was how to make the dinosaur look whole, make the sculpture look whole without getting the money for the full work, because we knew that that wasn't going to happen straight away.
It took over my whole life, it's all I can say, but it's taken a few years. It has taken several years. Well, my name's Rhys Griffin and I've got a background in digital art and 3D animation. And I was always sort of keen to find a way to contribute things I knew and my background to sort of do something more substantial for the sculptures. I was growing increasingly just, concerned about the condition of them and just how dilapidated they were getting, and nothing seemed to ever be getting done. So I started looking online because I was thinking of making a fuss myself somehow, and then I found the Friends of Crystal Palace Dinosaurs were already there sort of trying to solve it. This was quite a few years back. Well, it's getting more and more familiar now. People have it on their phones. A process called photogrammetry, which basically processes lots and lots of photographs to create a 3D geometry, a 3D scan. You get a scan of the overall shape, and then after that there's this long laborious process where really with the bigger ones where you have to go and scan a foot, and then you have to scan a leg, and you basically just do each bit separately, and usually with the heads they're more intricate. I've sometimes done several different scanning passes on their heads, and then you combine that all together into this sort of mega detailed 3D scan of the whole sculpture. It does take a very long time because I'm doing the work solo, alone. We began with the hardest ones of all. We began with the 4 big dinosaurs on the island. All 4 big dinosaurs are fully scanned now in detail, tail to head. But getting the complete detailed scans finished is just part of the work, because then I have to create a sort of 3D asset, then properly put detailed textures on them, and then you sort of have a finished piece of 3D geometry that can be opened in lots of different programs and turned into 3D assets that can be used for multiple purposes, like 3D animation, still image visualization, 3D printing, which people are excited about. So the scans that are being done now are a snapshot, an accurate, super detailed snapshot of how they are at this time. For that reason, they will never date. So the technology will change, maybe things will get more efficient or faster, but their value as historical records will always be there. The same way a historical photograph never loses its value. It's the same with the 3D scans. Luckily, we got the Megalosaurus before the damage, before the jaw fell down, so we have a complete scan and super high-res detail of it before it collapsed. And we also had scans of all the separate fragments, the major complete fragments that have fallen to the ground, which could be used to reconstruct it, repair it when hopefully there'll be a full repair with the original material. And that would have been impossible to do properly without having the complete scan of the head to start with, so it was so lucky. One reason I'm doing it like this is because I knew it wouldn't get done otherwise, because it would cost too much money. And I just saw this as a way that I could make a difference, you know, that I could really do something substantial for them. And they're important enough to me, I was happy to sacrifice some of my life to do this.
There is very little information available about the dinosaurs. We don't really have much of an archive. One of the things that we're doing as a charity is to try and create something called the Dinosaur Monitor Project, and that's where we ask members of the public to send us their old photographs of the dinosaurs so that we can track what's happened to them, different paint jobs that they've had, different ways they've been conserved. This has proved really interesting already because in 2010, it seems, the iguanodon had a whole piece of its jaw missing. We don't know anything about it, the council don't know anything about it. Today we've just put something out on our social media and said, does anyone know what happened here? Because we've got no archive records of it, and that was only 10 years ago. The hylaeosaur head has been replaced. We don't know when, we don't know who by, and we don't know why they did it, really. So the one that's on there at the moment is a fiberglass replacement. We think it was done in maybe the 1970s, and the original head is up on the hill. If you look inside, you can see 1854 scratched inside it. That's a piece of heritage that's just been left out on in the public. People stand on it, their kids jump on it, their dogs walk on it. And that's, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that because why would you assume that you couldn't? But it's just very strange that it's just been left there. It's funny because, I mean, there are some people who would say this is a piece of art, it's to be interacted with, and people should be able to do whatever they want with it because that's part of the history of it. So you get this kind of interesting, like, anti-conservation thing. Like, no, you should just let them decay and let them do what what nature intended, which I think is an interesting point of view, but it's not mine.
It's really nice to work in a project that has a really strong community focus, where people from the community come and spend a lot of their energy and give of their skills to make it happen, and that's really, really positive. It's really one of the big motivators. I think that's why all of us are in this to some degree. We just like it, and it's fun, and we meet wonderful people.
I think the dinosaurs, they have captured people's imagination, and there isn't anything else like these, as far as I'm aware, not just in London, but across the country. So many people just love these dinosaurs. I love the dinosaurs, my son loves the dinosaurs, and I feel very proud that they're in my constituency. My favourite dinosaur is this one, is an iguanodon, partly because of the history of the dinosaur. Back when they were first built, there was a tea party inside of the dinosaur, and that's an image that really sticks with me, the image of there being a tea party in the dinosaur.
I really love the ichthyosaur down there because he was all covered in vegetation when I first came here in June, and my first week being here, we helped to dig him out. So I got a personal connection with him now.
The first one, when you come over, megalosaurs, it's so impressive, isn't it? So impressive, yeah. And I think that's the use on all the images because it is an impressive one, yeah.
Any one of them, when I start looking at that form, just becomes my favorite in that moment. The scales and the way the faces are, the eyeballs. Basically, I can get excited about every single one of these sculptures.
They've been through the wars, they've been painted funny colours. So yeah, they've put up with a lot. So I guess it would have to be those four over there. I'd have to take all four of them, my desert island dinosaurs.
It's really hard to pick a favourite for me now. The easiest thing I can say is my favourite is whichever one I've been working on or studying and focusing on at the time. The Meg, because of everything that has happened, is always going to be incredibly special. I feel very protective towards the Megalosaurus in particular.
There is something about them, and I can't quite put my finger on it verbally, but when you're next to them, you know. They are simultaneously scary. They've got big, sort of scary teeth and googly eyes, some of them, but then they also look quite funny. The iguanodons kind of look like iguanas. The labyrinthodons look like sort of toothy toads. I mean, there's this sort of familiarity about them, and yet they're kind of scary. They are the kind of thing that you would encounter in a dream that's kind of a partial nightmare, partial comedy, that you wake up slightly laughing after having interacted with them, but also believing that it might actually kind of be real, and they could actually be alive. There's a little bit of something, alive about them.
The Crystal Palace Dinosaurs have been seen by millions of people. They're in a public park in South London. People walk past and see them, kids love them, and you can get up close from time to time. But they're in need of care. People might think big concrete monsters, nobody cares, they'll last forever. Absolutely not. Bits fall off, they naturally decay. And it's important to remember in their early days they were brightly painted. And over the years they have been cleaned and repainted, but that paint doesn't last very long. So the Friends of the Crystal Palace Dinosaurs is a wonderful and charitable organisation. They have been around for a long time, looking after the dinosaurs, negotiating with the local authorities, raising heritage funds and relying on the general public. So it's a fantastic job they do, and their work is needed, and we need the dinosaurs to survive another century or two.